Jake, you've been covering sports out west for a long time, and now a team that's kind of in the west. Texas State is joining the Pac-12. That conference has enough universities to play real deal football in their league and be a complete league by 2026. Yeah. To me, this is step one of Oregon State and Washington State, not just rebuilding the Pac-12, but rebuilding their brands and trying to put themselves in a position where in 2030, 2031, if the ACC needs to backfill, it's those two schools that they look to. And maybe that's the biggest piece of this entire Pac-12 advancement to me is I foresee in 4 or 5 years the Pac-12 once again going through a big set of issues when Washington State and Oregon State have built themselves up enough to hopefully on their parts find their way into a league like the Big 12 or the ACC.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a whole move just to get themselves, you mentioned, into a spot where if and when conference realignment at the Power 4 level comes back around, those two are viable candidates. I will add one more to the mix because they think they're going to make this move to the Pac-12 with the thought of leaping up, and that's Boise State. I think that they think over the next 3, 4, 5 years, they can establish themselves as a viable candidate to jump to the Power 4 as well. So, yeah, I do expect that, the Pac-12, it's going to be around for, this little interim period, but there's going to be a whole lot of upheaval, it feels like, at the end of the decade going into the early part of the 2030s. And Wazoo and Oregon State, they're positioning themselves to make that leap once again.
Let's play this game. Texas State has made a bowl game the last couple of seasons, but they had not done that prior to G.J. Kinney becoming the head coach there, taking them 15 some odd years since moving into the FBS level. Is this a smart move? 1, for the Pac-12, 2, for Texas State?
I think it's a good move in that they're going to make more money. Now, There's an argument you made. They stuck around in the Sun Belt. Maybe the next round of media rights deals, they would have made similar amounts of money. But if the $10 million that some people are pitching that the Pac-12, the new look Pac-12 can generate, it's a no-brainer for those schools to take that money while they can get it. But I'm with you that long-term, now, there's a decent chance that come the next round of realignment, the Mountain West and the Pac-12 are reforming to merge into the Pac Mountain Conference, because simply put, there's not enough programs out here in the Western United States. And Texas State, they've joined a Western league, so they've got to keep their eyes peeled at all times for any movement on this front, because they very well could find themselves starting to look for a new home and potentially having to ask the Sun Belt to come back home one day.
Are we close whatsoever to a Power 5 again, or is that idea that many Pac-12 pundits want you to know, is that complete poppycock?
I'm going to make a lot of my Utah State brethren angry when I say this. It's nowhere near that. Here's the deal. In time, we just talked about the fact that we think that this is going to maybe last for 4, 5, 6 years, and then it's probably going to get broken up again. Let's say the Pac-12 were to stick together long term, give it a decade, maybe 2 decades down the road. Could they establish themselves maybe as a Power 5 once again? Yes, but I just don't think with what I expect the lifespan of what this current iteration of this conference to look like is going to be. Yeah, it's not a Power 5. It's the Power 4 and the G6.
Are we going to feel, and I can make the case for yes, I don't know if it's an insane stretch, are we going to feel the effect of this in the Big 12 in 4 or 5 years?
Meaning what? I'm trying to follow your logic.
So Texas State going to the Pac-12 and that conference being reformed, will we feel the effects of that? And even in the kind of the case that I would make would be, maybe you look at Washington State and Oregon State and say, wow, they built their own conference. They become much more valuable in the eyes of Brett Yormark or anybody. Will we feel the effects in that way, in the realignment way, in 4 or 5 years?
I think we could. It all kind of depends on what the SEC and the Big Ten's long-term vision is. Tony Petitti's out here speaking to the Big Ten commissioner, crowing about the fact that they're going to stick to their guns and they want the 4 automatic bids in the college football playoff. That tells me they plan on being one of the boss hogs of college football going forward. And there are strong rumors out there about the Big Ten wanting to go to potentially 24 teams. Well, I know that there's some schools in the Big 12 that'd be happy to jump into the Big Ten to rejoin some of their Pac-12 brethren. Utah, but that's another story for another day. But I think the biggest thing is the Big 12 could feel those effects. The nice part is Brett Yormark, he is shown to be a pretty shrewd negotiator, and he's done a very good job so far about kind of seeing the future when it comes to college athletics and trying to stay at least on top, if not ahead of it. And I hope he continues to do so, because the Big 12, they need a visionary like him.
On that note, a bit here, you don't foresee Utah getting bold enough to go try to rebuild a conference, do you?
Rebuild a conference, no. Begging and pleading and crying to get into the Big Ten, yes.
Sure. And on that, right, What are the odds in your eyes we see a shakeup in the Big 12 in 4 or 5 years when we start to rework these TV deals? Or is there any chance that we start to either there are two sides to this. A, you lose schools who leave for the Big 10 or the SEC. B, you say, hey, Cincinnati, this is just not viable for us from a financial standpoint. We feel like we're more valuable and can give schools more money if we don't have you in our league.
I think it's more of a likelihood that the SEC or the Big 10 picks off a school or two from the Big 12. I get where your logic is, speaking of maybe like a Cincinnati saying, hey, thanks, but it's time you guys move on down the road. I just think that the biggest thing for the Big 12 is they're going to monitor to see what the ACC does. I'm sure they'd be happy to scoop up some of those Florida schools, the Louisvilles out there, maybe even grab Pitt when it comes to conference expansion. But I do think that the Big 12 down the line, there are likely going to be teams in this conference that are going to be targeted by the Big 10, I think in particular, to join that league if they really do want to expand plus 20 plus schools and make themselves into a miniature NFL.
Can we safely say, though, that Clemson and Florida State could exit the ACC, go to the Big 10 or the SEC, and not need a pairing from the Big 12 to go with them? Should we feel like we're not in total danger if the ACC starts to fall apart?
No, the ACC can fall apart and the Big 12 would be unscathed. I'm pretty confident in saying that because, yes, they could pull a Florida State. They could pull a North Carolina away, a Clemson away, and that's not going to affect the Big 12. The problem is if the Big 10 has those eyes out towards the West Coast or maybe the Intermountain West up where I'm at with BYU, Utah, Arizona State, and Colorado, they want a kind of a bridge to the West Coast. That's when the concern is that they start eyeing other schools actually in the Big 12.
Yeah. If you're Brett Yormark and this move has been made, Texas State to the Pac-12, do you pay any attention to it?
No, sorry. I love San Marcos. I've been there a couple of times, but yeah, they just don't move the needle enough. And I know that they tried in terms of evaluating all options. I still, for the life of me, don't know why UNLV wasn't like given more overtures or more love from the Pac-12. But I also think that UNLV looked at it and said, hey, we have a chance to be one of the big dogs in the newly reformed Mountain West. Why would we want to go play second, third, or fourth fiddle to Boise State, Washington State, and Oregon State in the Pac-12? So I think that they're in a pretty good spot. So yeah, I think if you were the Pac-12, all you really could do is look at schools in Texas, and TSU ended up being the option.
Yeah, certainly Dan Mullen, that shows an investment that UNLV wants to put into football. Their schedule is going to be much easier than the Pac-12 schedule. And if they're 11-1 or 12-0, no matter who they play, it's really tough to leave that team out.
They have watched Boise State for decades, Drake, make runs to the BCS, make runs to the college football playoff, feasting on the Mountain West. UNLV's like, okay, they moved along. We're the big dog now.
It's their term. Jake Hatch, what can folks expect from Locked On Cougars? They've already gotten plenty of it this week when it comes to, I'm going to say content, but really the whole Jake Retzlaff and quarterback situation.
Yeah, the biggest thing is kind of the next steps for Jake Retzlaff, where he goes next. We'll be covering that. And also, we'll be looking at all the options at quarterback for BYU, passing along any intel that we are able to get in terms of what the quarterbacks look like. You and I will be at Big 12 Media Days. I'm looking forward to actually asking Kalani Sitake and the players that are there, hey, what's your evaluation of these other three quarterbacks? Give us the feeling around the program about these guys, because that's a big part of this conversation that we still need to break down over the next month and change until training camp starts.
Certainly, that is Jake Hatch. You can find him on all platforms and through Locked On Cougars YouTube, as well as that Spotify and Apple and wherever you get it. This has been, it always will be, Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. A crossover with Cougars and Dose Grande.